Misplaced my agenda. Okay. Well, good evening and welcome to the February 9th regular meeting of the Scarborough Zoning Board of Appeals. The meeting will now come to order. This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, the public has the right to hear everything that is being said and to view all of the exhibits that are presented. Please notify the chairperson, which is myself, James Hebert. If you are unable to hear or see the proceedings, you can do so in the chat box. Tonight we are virtual, just due to the circumstances that are going on in our community right now. So if you are joining us from Zoom, you can raise your hand to signal your intention or desire to speak when we get to the public comment section of the application. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat box and we'll address them if we are able. The board works from a prepared agenda, which we'll be going through in the following order. We'll have our Pledge of Allegiance, we'll have our call to order, our Pledge of Allegiance, roll call after that, approval of the minutes from our January 12th meeting, approval of the draft written decision for Appeal 2717. We have one appeal tonight, Appeal number 2718. We'll have zoning board comments and then we will adjourn. So that being said, please best you can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. Great. Okay, may we have the roll call, please?
James Hebert.
Here.
Rudy Karen.
Here.
David Bork.
Here.
Peter Freilinger.
Here.
Christine Snow.
Oh, you need to unmute, Christine.
Long-time here.
And Shelley Stevenson.
Great. Okay. Next, we will have the approval of the minutes from the January 12th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review and take a look at the minutes? If there are any questions or comments, please say so now. If you'd like to have any amendments to the minutes. Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented? Mr. Bork?
Yes, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting held on January 12th, 2022.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
I second.
Excellent. All those in favor, Mr. Bork?
Aye.
Mr. Freilinger?
Aye.
Ms. Snow? I would try spacebar, actually. That's a quick
Aye.
spacebar. Excellent. Ms. Stevenson? Oh, and you're muted, Shelley.
I was doing the space bar, but it wasn't working. Yeah, that was on the tip. Thank you. Aye.
It's all right. And Mr. Karen?
Aye.
Excellent. I vote aye as well. That passes. Minutes are approved. So let's move on to the approval of the draft written decision for appeal number 2717. That was the practical difficulty appeal, practical difficulty variance by Jennifer Capano, 22 Robinson Road. Has everyone had a chance to review the findings from our previous meeting? Everyone's gone on a read through. What we do is we do a read through, make sure that everything that was entered into the record matches what we had said previously during the meeting. This is our time to vet through and just sort of review that just to make sure there aren't any typos. Is that things we're saying yes instead of no and have or have not. So if I'm not seeing any comments from folks, I'll entertain a motion to approve the findings as presented. Mr. Bork?
Yes, a motion to approve the draft written decision for appeal on January 12th, 2022. Appeal number 2717, practical difficulty variance, appeal by Jennifer Capano at 22 Robinson Road.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
I second.
Excellent. That's Mr. Karen. All those in favor, Mr. Bork?
Aye.
Mr. Freilinger?
Aye.
Ms. Snow?
Aye.
Ms. Stevenson?
Aye.
And Mr. Karen?
Aye.
Excellent. Those are approved. Okay, now we will transition to our new appeals for the evening. We have one appeal on the agenda, appeal number 2718, special exception appeal by Teradyne Consultants on behalf of Contour Properties LLC. This is at 8 Science Park Road, unit number 3, assessors map R077, map 300. Is there someone here from Teradyne Consultants that would like to speak on the appeal? Go ahead. Is it Michael
Yes,
Tadema?
yes, I am here on behalf of the applicant to present this project. I'm not sure if how you'd like to how you'd like to go about this, but I do have a short presentation if you'd like to see that.
Yeah. So what we'll do is please go through your presentation. Tell us a little bit about why you're here, and generally what is the purpose of this application that we're looking at. Though a lot of things might be self-explanatory, though we're looking at the application, we want to make sure we say everything into the record just so that it's recorded for the Zoom video and for audio as well, just for future reference and posterity.
Sure.
So go ahead and read through your presentation, and then afterwards I'll continue forward. We'll go through each of the questions and
yeah,
we'll
am I able to share a screen? Share my screen.
Michael, you should be able to share your screen if you want. Do you see a share screen button?
I don't. I see a chat, lower hand, and Q&A.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I need to be a instead of a participant, maybe I need to
Panelist.
be a panelist. Yeah.
Let's see if I can promote to panelist. There we go. That should change things. Did that change anything for you?
Yes, it did. So let's see. And there I am. And let me share my screen here. So let me know when you can all see this. I know it might take a minute to load up. It's an aerial photo of the site in question.
I'm seeing it.
Yep,
Okay.
it's coming through. All right, go ahead.
Great. So what we're looking at here is Science Park subdivision. So this is just to sort of orient everyone in town. This is on the right side is Route 1. North is more or less straight up. And on the left side of this yellow border, this is the so-called Scarborough connector that connects Route 1 over to 95 and 295. The road coming off Route 1 into our site is Science Park Road. And so this whole area outlined in yellow is about 14.5 acres. It's owned by Contour Properties. It was purchased by Contour Properties back in 2016. The history of this parcel is it was originally approved as a 6-lot commercial subdivision in 1978 by the planning board. And there were 2 lots. 2 of those 6 lots were developed. One of them being this lot here, which was lot 1 of this original Science Park subdivision, and then lot 2, which is what my cursor is circling here. Lot 1 is not owned by the applicant, although it is still technically part of the subdivision. It's not owned by the applicant, so I'm not going to talk much about it. Lot 2, the building on so-called Lot 2, was vacant at the time the applicant bought it. It was occupied by the Foundation for Blood Research at one time prior to that. And the applicant renovated it. We went through the planning board for amended site plan approval. There was an expansion, and it was converted into a modern office space, which is currently occupied by several tenants. Shortly thereafter, that was 2016, 2017. Shortly thereafter, the applicant or the owner converted the entire property into a commercial condominium, a 5-unit commercial condominium. And these two small buildings here, these existing buildings became Unit 2 and 2A. And again, there's nothing else is developed on the parcel, but he had and has plans to develop some of these undeveloped areas in the future. And so what I'm going to, the next plan I'm going to show you is, this is the latest subdivision plan or condo plat that shows the 5 units. So, and on some of these undeveloped units or areas, undeveloped areas, we showed potential development, I guess speculative development. So a lot of this is again speculative, but is not built. So this area here with the building 2 and 2A, these are existing, and the road exists, but nothing else on the site is built out. So this building over here, Unit 4, Unit 5 is not developed. And the area that we're talking about tonight is Unit 3. So a year or so ago, the owner was approached by a Maine-based continuing care facility or continuing care company looking for a place to develop a facility in Scarborough, and thought that this would be an ideal place for it. So at the time when we looked into that, we realized that the zoning district, the BOR zoning district, did not allow that. It was not an allowed use in the BOR, which is where this site is located. In fact, there are no residential uses allowed in the BOR. So at the time, our group worked with staff and with the council to come up with a way to allow the development on this in Unit 3 here, and decided to pursue a zoning change. And so we went through that process with town council, and we worked with staff to sort of determine what use the proposed project would fall under in the ordinance. And ultimately we decided, it's a mouthful, but I'm going to read the use that this falls under. This is defined as a residential and long-term care facility for the ill, aged, or disabled. And so we went through the process of changing the list of uses in the BOR to allow that use as a special exception. And so and we're sort of marching through the steps here towards eventually towards construction, but along the way, zoning change. Now we're here before you for a special exception approval, and then next we'll go to the planning board for site plan approval. And so again, back in 2019, it was thought this lot could be developed into a medical office building. That's what was envisioned at the time. Clearly now we have a different use and a different sort of development pattern on this lot. So next I'll show you the site plan for the continuing care facility that we're currently working with on Unit 3. So here's that site plan. Obviously now we're only looking at that one area of the site. We're zoomed in to that area. So what's proposed here is a 2.5-story building, I'll call it. It's really, from the front side, it's 2 stories. In the, I guess in the north corner, grade drops off, and it would be 3 stories in the back. A much smaller parking footprint than was originally envisioned for this area, for this lot, I'll call it, even or condo unit. because the use just has a much less parking demand than a medical office building, which has quite high parking demand. So, like I said, the use being a special exception requires us to make a stop with the Zoning Board of Appeals before we head over to the Planning Board to discuss more of the standards under the site plan review ordinance. And I guess in my opinion, what we're looking at tonight is or you folks are to determine whether or not this use is appropriate on this site. And from the very beginning, we thought this was a really this use fit very well on this site. There's public water, there's public sewer here. It's residential, but it's almost, these are residents who will live here. They won't have cars, they won't leave, and there will be full-time staff taking care of the residents full time. So, although it's not strictly a medical use, clearly there's some overlap there with all the medical uses that are in the neighborhood here. So to us, this makes a lot of sense to go right on this site. There really are no neighbors, with the exception of the building that's within the subdivision. I'll go back to the overall aerial photo, and you can see you've got obviously the Scarborough connector to the west. To the north, you have up above the page is the Nonsuch River. There's a Central Main power corridor immediately to the north of the site, and no other immediate abutters really. So it's pretty tucked away. The impact on abutters would be negligible. The site, one last thing I'll mention, the site
Here's the one.
is a portion of this site is in the shoreland zone. I'll go back to the site plan here, and the shoreland zone kind of nips the site, nips the corner of the site, and this shoreland zone is associated with a believe it or not, a coastal wetland associated with the Nonsuch River. This part of the Nonsuch River was determined to be tidal up in this area by our consultants, and which is defined as a coastal wetland under the shoreline zoning ordinance. So that's what this shoreline zone is associated with. We've looked at, there are of course standards related to shoreline zoning, such as impervious area in the shoreline zone, and clearing within the shoreline zone. And I can run through those numbers, but this project is in compliance with all those numbers as currently designed. So I think the application that was put together by my colleague Adrian is pretty thorough, and it goes through all the standards for special exception approval. So I won't go further into those, but certainly if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thanks for your time.
Right. Thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate that. Any questions from the board at this time? Mr. Freilinger, I see that you have your hand up. Would you like to ask something?
Yeah, there are several questions. First off, the area, I guess it's kind of to the east. There's a triangular area, which on the second page of the presentation is marked as, I think, open space and the rest. Is that part of the condominium, or is that not part of the condominium, or who owns that, or how does that work?
Is that this area here you're talking about?
Yeah, that's right.
So it's currently part of the overall Science Park subdivision. The owner's currently working with the Scarborough Land Trust. That land will be donated to the Scarborough Land Trust, and it's about 5.5 acres that will be donated, and as part of that, there will be a trail, some sort of trail network developed in coordination with the Scarborough Land Trust.
Okay, thanks. And then the second one, I was kind of confused. Between page 2 and 3, there's a pretty substantial difference between the parking and the hardscape description. So I guess what should we use for an understanding of what the hardscape will look like? And this relates to some of the questions we may ask about shoreland issues and things like that. But between pages 2 and 3, I was just a little confused by that. So could you help out on that a little bit?
Understood. Yeah. So this is page 2, and what we're looking at here was this was the latest subdivision plan, which was approved in 2019, and several of these areas included speculative development. So again, at the time, it was envisioned that this area would be developed with a medical office building, which is what's shown here. And medical offices have a very high parking demand. So you can see there's much more parking. That's no longer proposed. So the third plan that I showed, which is the one currently on screen now, is the plan that is proposed and that we're taking through to the planning board.
Okay, thanks. And then the last one is on this page 3 diagram, which is what I'm going to focus on. I think those curved lines are where what's been determined to be the shoreland area. Is that correct?
Yes, this area here that I'm sort of tracing is the shoreland zone.
Okay, got it. Thanks very much. I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Yep, sure.
Other questions? I guess on that, Mr. Longstaff, can you give us a little bit of background on I guess the ability to be able to build inside of the shoreland zone and sort of not necessarily what the exact details are, but generally what they're allowed to build in that area?
Sure. So the curved lines that Michael just traced for you are the outside, or it's the buffer that's 250 feet from the edge of the coastal wetland. So it's a 250-foot buffer. You can build within the 250-foot buffer. You can't build within the first 75 feet closest to the resource. So they're perfectly within their rights to build within the 250 buffer. However, that portion of this entire condominium lot, the portion of the condominium lot that is within that 250-foot buffer is limited to 20% non-vegetated surface areas. That includes roadways, parking, patios, building, anything that isn't growing something, basically. And I believe on this plan, I can't tell because it's so small, but I think that the calculations for that have been computed, and so I can't recall now. I remember looking at it, but it's well within the 20% limit.
Yeah, this plan represents about 11% impervious area.
Great. Awesome. Thank you both. So for my understanding, they are allowed to build within this 250-foot zone as long as they're outside of the 75 feet to the water source, but there are just certain restrictions that they have to abide by, like the 20% impervious limit to 20% impervious surface.
Correct. There's that, and then there's a 25% limit of clearing for development.
Perfect. Other questions from the board? Okay. So at this point, what we're going to do, Michael, is go into the questions on the application. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read each one aloud, and you can, all you need to do is just answer. Either you can expand upon the answer that you provide in the application, or just read exactly what you provided in the application. Again, this is all for just recording it into the record. So the standards for special exceptions, A, the proposed use will not create unsanitary or unhealthful conditions by reason of sewage disposal, emissions to the air or water, or other aspects of its design or operation.
Yeah, and if you give me 1 second, I'm going to bring up the application so I can
Sure,
sure,
absolutely.
answer those. Okay, so in response to that standard, I'm just going to read what was in the application, and it says,
Yep.
The proposed development on Unit 3 of the Science Park condominium is a continuing care facility in a 2.5-story building with associated parking, stormwater management infrastructure, and utilities. The building will be served with public sewer and public water services, and stormwater management infrastructure and erosion control measures are proposed.
Excellent. Any questions or comments from the board? All right. Letter B. The proposed use will not create unsafe vehicular or pedestrian traffic conditions when added to existing and foreseeable traffic in its vicinity.
The Science Park condominium does have a traffic movement permit from the Maine Department of Transportation, which included that the traffic movement permit included the traffic associated with the medical office use on this site, which is a much higher traffic generator. So the proposed facility will result in much less traffic than the medical office, and largely because the residents remain at this facility and don't have vehicles.
Excellent. Thank you. Letter C. The proposed use will not create public safety problems which would be substantially different from those created by existing uses in the neighborhood or require a substantially greater degree in municipal fire or police protection than existing uses in the neighborhood.
The proposed project is a residential facility for individuals who require continuing care. The proposed building will be fully sprinkled and will include fire connection for the fire department. The building alarm system is also required to go directly to the fire department.
Great. Mr. Fallinger, you have a question?
This is maybe a question for Mr. Longstaff too. I don't question the applicant's response to this. It's just that as a continuing care facility, my guess is there may be a higher than normal demand on emergency medical services for the facility. Is that contemplated as part of the questioning process for this question, or is this purely on fire and police?
If I could take a shot at answering this, well, real quick, for Mr. Fralinger, I think this is more geared towards if the location is inside of a neighborhood, like an existing neighborhood, causing potential disturbance due to just noise and general activity that ambulatory fire department and police vehicles cause if they're sort of ripping through a neighborhood with the sirens going and the lights going. A valid point. I think this is sort of that interpretation that we have to make potentially as a board. I'll let Mr. Longstaff comment on it if you will, but I had a similar thought on this as well. I think that because of the vicinity of this to the fire department and the fact that it's on Route 1 and you're going to have these vehicles going up and down at the same sort of frequency anyways, I don't think it'll be a greater impact. Anyways, that's just from my perspective. But
no, Mr. Chairman, it really is from a finding of fact perspective. It's all I'm interested in. Again, it was designed as a medical office facility, which you wouldn't normally have, presumably emergency needs there on a regular basis. I could see a continuing care facility might need more, but I just don't know whether that's something that falls into the question of this thing. So yeah, Brian, if there's anything you can add to that, that'd be helpful.
Well, the only thing I'd add is it's also in the context of other uses in the neighborhood. So since you got Maine Medical Center's campus is right across the street, you've got, other types of different emergency care or healthcare facilities that, I think you put it in the context. Now, if it was in a residential neighborhood, that would be one thing to have fire trucks and ambulances running up and down the street day and night because of, you know, a higher demand. But because this is in a business office research district where other medical facilities and healthcare facilities exist, I don't think that in context of the neighborhood, it necessarily would place a higher demand. Certainly not on the emergency, on the ambulatory thing, and with all of the fire and fire suppression and fire alarm systems that are in place, and the fact that it's in a growth area and not out in a rural area where you're extending those services. I think those are the types of things that you want to consider when you're looking at that question.
Got it. And I just want to be clear for the other members of the board. I'm not raising a concern here. I just want to be complete in the consideration of the question. So thanks. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Longstaff. Thanks, Mr. Freilinger. Also point out too, Coastal Maine Women's is right next door as well. And a lot of folks who are pregnant, a lot of go to that facility as well. So there's always a chance that an ambulance might need to be called there. Shelley, did you say you had your hand raised? You'd like to ask something?
I did. I don't know if this is the time to ask it or not, but do we know how far back the nearest residential neighborhood is? With it being a 24-hour facility.
From I understand that area, and Michael, you can clarify on this, but on the other side of Route 1, probably, or the other side of the connector, I think it might be residential out that way.
I think that is the closest, yeah, or potentially up towards South Portland. But yeah, certainly not on the other side of the connector or on the other side of the Nonsuch River.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Letter D, the proposed use will not result in sedimentation or erosion or have an adverse effect on water supplies.
The proposed project includes stormwater treatment measures and a sedimentation and erosion control plan meeting the town of Scarborough and Maine Department of Environmental Protection Regulation.
Excellent. Thank you. Letter E, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to physical size, visual impact, intensity of use, proximity to other structures, and density of development.
The proposed use, a continuing care facility, is similar to nursing homes and medical buildings in the surrounding area along Route 1 in Scarborough. The building will be located at the end of a dead-end road that serves a commercial condominium. Other uses within the commercial condominium include office and medical office. The building is a similar scale and siting to other buildings within the commercial condominium and surrounding medical campuses. Off-site abutting properties contain undeveloped wetland area and the Scarborough connector.
All right. Thank you very much. Letter F, if located in a shoreland zone as depicted on the town of Scarborough official shoreland zoning map, the proposed use will comply with all of the requirements of the town and Scarborough shoreland zoning ordinance.
A portion of Unit 3 is located within the shoreland zone, as we talked about and looked at on the screen. The proposed use and plan will comply with all requirements of the Scarborough shoreland zoning ordinance.
Okay. Letter G, the applicant has sufficient right, title, or interest in the site of the proposed use to be able to carry out the proposed use.
The applicant owns the parcel proposed for development, and a copy of the property deed was included with the application.
All right, thank you. Letter H, the applicant has the technical and financial ability to meet the standards of this section and to comply with any conditions imposed by the Board of Appeals pursuant to subsection 5 of this section.
The applicant has experience developing commercial and residential properties and managing large construction projects. In addition to the 2 units that have been developed at Science Park Condominium, Bob Goudreau, the sole member of Contour Properties, owns and successfully redeveloped Elevation Center, located at 71 US Route 1, and Nonsuch River Plaza, located at 51 US Route 1 in Scarborough. Bob has a proven track record of securing financing for projects of a similar scale to the proposed residential care facility at Science Park. Although it is too early in the process to be able to secure financing for the proposed project, it is expected to be financed by one of Contour Properties' financial partners. The applicant has hired a team of technical consultants, including Teradyne Consultants as the project engineer, CWS as the project architects, and Owen Haskell as the project surveyor.
Great. And last letter I, the
Actually,
proposed use.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
just
go
a
ahead.
quick, and I note Mr. Gaudreau is on the call. CCRC developments are uniquely complex from a regulatory perspective, and the rest. Has Mr. Gaudreau developed these in the past? And again, I have some background in oversight of some of these types of developments across southern Maine. And I just want to understand, this is not just a residential development. This is a complex, highly regulated space of residential development. And if Mr. Gaudreau could add some color to give us some comfort on that, that would be helpful.
Am
Mr.
I on?
Gaudreau? Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yep, we hear you.
Okay. We've done multiple care facilities. The latest one we did was the moorings in Cumberland. But we've done multiple other, we did a lot of work for, the veterans homes in Scarborough and in Norway. We've been around and done these, and we know there's quite a bit to these. This is nothing new to us.
And that's helpful because, again, I just want to validate this isn't your first regulated continuing care facility, Mr. Gaudreau, and I don't want to cast any aspersions on you or anything at all like that. I just want to validate that this is something that you're familiar with and are aware of the depth of complexity here.
We have 2 more of these planned already.
Got it. Okay. Thank you very much. And like I said, please don't take this amiss.
No, it's fine. I understand. It's a
Yeah.
good question. Valid question. Thank you.
Great. Thank you both. Letter I, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to the generation of noise and hours of operation.
The continuing care facility is not expected to generate noise in excess of noise resulting from the existing office and medical uses in the surrounding neighborhood. The facility is staffed 24 hours a day.
Okay. Great. At this time, we'll look to see if there's any public comment. Mr. Longstaff, have there been any emails, letters? Is there anybody here in the Zoom call as a audience member that would like to speak on this application?
We did not receive any emails or written comments. I did not receive any phone calls, and I see no one in the audience raising their hand to participate and speak.
Great. All right. I guess seeing none, I'll open and close the public forum at this time since no one else is here. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to speak amongst ourselves on the board. Thank you, Michael and Mr. Gaudreau. Really appreciate it. If we have any more questions, we'll ask them directly to you. But right now the conversation is going to move a little bit more internally with just us as we go through and vote on each facet of the application. So first off, I'm just going to read the first one here. We'll step through just like we did just now. We'll all go through and read our findings of fact and conclusions of law from the statements provided by Michael from Teradyne as well from the application that's in front of us. So I'll start with letter A. The proposed use will not create unsanitary or unhealthful conditions by reason of sewage disposal, emissions to the air or water, or other aspects of its design or operation. And I'm going to start with Mr. Bork.
It's on public water and sewer, and there's no issue regarding abutters. So I think the applicant has adequately shown that he meets this criterion.
Excellent. I'll go Ms. Stevenson. Oh, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add to that. I agree.
Great. Mr. Karen?
I agree. The intent here is to produce and develop a healthful and safe space for the users. In contrast, anything that would be unsanitary or have any damaging effects on the nearby environment, emissions, the air, water, or sewage.
Go to Ms. Snow.
I agree with the previous remarks.
Okay. Mr. Freilinger.
Agreed. No, nothing further to add.
Okay, I believe that is it. And I agree as well. They've stated that they're going to be on public water, public sewer. There's nothing about this design or operation that's different from any other medical office building that's in that park or in the general facility as well. So that being said, all those in favor, I'm going to run right through again, just a straight yes or no. Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson,
Yes.
Ms. Snow,
Aye.
Mr. Freilinger,
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Excellent. That passes. Let's go to letter B. The proposed use will not create unsafe vehicular or pedestrian traffic conditions when added to existing and foreseeable traffic in its vicinity. Mr. Bork?
Yes, the applicant has shown that they have existing DOT traffic movement permit. And this will certainly not generate any more traffic than what it had already been approved for. In fact, it should be less, as the applicant has shown.
Cool. I'll go with Ms. Stevenson.
I agree. There's already an existing road to this proposed building. And it looks like they've thought of any extra traffic that could come in there, but it looks like it'll be minimal.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Snow?
Yes, it's a reduction, considering their already approved use.
Excellent point. Thank you. Mr. Freilinger?
Nothing further to add. Agreed.
And Mr. Karen?
Agreed. As stated, they have a traffic movement permit. They won't be adding anything major to their already existing road. So no concerns.
Great. Yeah, as was pointed out and noted by Ms. Snow, they have a lot of buffer space between the proposed parking that they're offering compared to what they are able to put in there, which in parking for me is always one to really hone in on. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Excellent. All those in favor, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson,
Yes.
Ms. Snow,
Aye.
Mr. Freilinger,
Aye.
and Mr. Karen.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Excuse me. Letter C, the proposed use will not create public safety problems, which would be substantially different from those created by existing uses in the neighborhood or require a substantially greater degree in municipal fire or police protection than existing uses already in the neighborhood. Mr. Bork.
Yes, the facility will be fully sprinkled and alarmed. Not only that, but there are other medical facilities in this general neighborhood, including the huge main health complex, which is virtually across the street to the east. So I just don't see any kind of an issue here at all.
Great. Ms. Stevenson.
It does not appear from the application that that's going to pose any extra public safety issues.
Excellent. Ms. Snow.
I agree. Previous remarks.
Great. Mr. Freilinger.
No, I agree, and I appreciate the respondent or the applicant's response to the questions about emergency care and the rest. So no concerns here.
Excellent. And Mr. Karen.
Agreed with previously stated remarks and what Mr. Bork said. Also, it was mentioned that the facility will be overseen 24 hours per day.
Great. And I always look at the wording of this substantially different or substantially greater degree. They're really looking for an extreme example here. And like was already pointed out, we're already on next to Route 1 and the Scarborough connector. You're going to have emergency vehicles going up and down that anyways. And pointed out the main health campus right across the street, as well as the Scarborough Veterans Home. literally barely 2 miles down the road as well. So there is a precedent, not that we are governed by precedent here, but there is a area. You're already going to see these vehicles go through the police and ambulatory and fire department. So I'll stop rambling now. All those in favor of letter C, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson,
Yes.
Ms. Snow,
Aye.
Mr. Freilinger,
Yes.
Mr. Karen?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Letter D, the proposed use will not result in sedimentation or erosion or have an adverse effect on water supplies. Mr. Bork?
The applicant's done a great job designing this project so that there won't be any adverse effect. And I would say that the project is very well thought out. There's really no impact at all that I can see.
Excellent. Ms. Stevenson?
Yeah, I appreciate that they actually did note in some of their maps that they have some erosion mitigation techniques in place for that. This actual letter D, I think will be minimal, if any.
Excellent. Ms. Snow?
This also seems to be a reduction in the hardscape compared to what their original plan with all the parking was going to be.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Freilinger?
Yeah, I agreed with Ms. Snow. It's a reduction in the hardscape, and if anything, it's probably an improvement on the prior approved use of the facility. So, agreed.
Excellent. Mr. Karen?
Agreed. Nothing further add.
Excellent. Yeah, the fact that they have the sedimentation and erosion control plan, they're working with the town of Scarborough and the main DEP. I see no reason for concern here. All those in favor of letter D being met, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson,
Yes.
Ms. Snow,
Aye.
Mr. Freilinger,
Aye.
and Mr. Karen.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Letter E, excuse me. The proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to physical size, visual impact, intensity of use, proximity to other structures, and density of development. Mr. Bork.
Yeah, there are many other medical facilities of much larger scale, within the immediate neighborhood. So this project really fits right in very nicely.
Great. Ms. Stevenson,
I agree with that statement.
Ms. Snow,
I see this project as an asset, and I think that's a very good location for this project.
great. Mr. Freilinger,
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I'm going to bring this up in our comments afterwards, but it strikes me that maybe this is so in keeping with the BOR use area that maybe there's not a special use exemption required for future developments of this type in the BOR area. So I want to add that as a comment, maybe as a recommendation to the council in the future. But I fully agree with what this is intended for, and have no issues with this.
let's make a note of that. That way, because I think we'll probably do a separate. We can do a separate recommendation specific
Yeah.
for town council.
Exactly. Outside of this issue entirely, but add it for the comment section. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Karen.
Agreed, and I appreciate the information and explanation at the beginning of tonight's appeal, walking through the site plans and the various drawings that were developed.
Yes, I agree. It's always nice to see a well thought out, well put together application. So we greatly appreciate that. I'll also add that similar to the vein of Ms. Snow's thought, you're looking at a really ideal location where this sort of be tucked away. It's at a dead end street off of Route 1. Really not going to have any kind of visual impact, though its density really blends in with the other facilities in that area. All those in favor of letter E being met, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson,
Yes.
Ms. Snow,
Aye.
Mr. Freilinger,
Aye. Sorry.
Mr. Karen.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Let's go to letter F. If located in a shoreland zone as depicted on the town of Scarborough official shoreland zoning map, The proposed use will comply with all of the requirements of the Town of Scarborough Shoreland Zoning Ordinance. Mr. Bork.
The applicant has demonstrated that the amount in the shoreline zone is within the required percentage. I believe it was 11%, which is less than the amount that could be covered, and has met all the requirements of the town as well as the DEP regarding shoreline zoning.
Excellent. Ms. Stevenson.
Yeah, I agree. It looks like that it's in compliance with the requirements for the town of Scarborough.
Thank you. Ms. Snow.
I associate myself with the previous remarks.
Excellent. Mr. Fralinger.
I agree. One thing two things I'd like to note, Mr. Chairman. One is that I did reach out to staff with a question about what our responsibilities for the shoreline zoning ordinance are in this kind of a thing. And that was a general question. It was not with respect to the specific application, just a general respect, because we do have a responsibility for some shoreline zoning requirements. This came up about 4 or 5 months ago with respect to a property off of CV's Landing Road. And what I'd first off, again, on this issue, I have nothing, but maybe we could do some training, or when we think about our annual training cycle, do something on the shoreline zoning ordinance so that we can have a little bit of understanding. It's a complex and somewhat intricate ordinance, so I just maybe note that for the record.
Thank you, Ms. Fralinger. Duly noted.
Thank you. But no issues. And I just want to say no issues.
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Karen.
Nothing further to add, as mentioned, working with the town and meeting any of their requirements.
Excellent. And a lot of the reason why we spend a lot of time focused in on the shoreline zone and its setbacks, because we are a shore town, and it's very, this is a very serious impact for wherever we're working on any kind of projects in this area. And we really appreciate the work that's been done by the applicant in putting together this very well thought out and professionally done application. See no issues here. But since it is a shoreline zone, I think I will, as part of the motion, just recommend that planning board also review and confirm the findings of their shoreline calculations as well. So that being said, all those in favor of letter F being met, Mr. Bork.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Ms. Snow.
Aye.
Mr. Fralinger.
With Mr. Hebert's recommendation of the planning board, agreed.
Mr. Karen.
Aye.
Excellent. I vote aye as well. Letter, excuse me, letter G. The applicant has sufficient right, title, or interest in the site of the proposed use to be able to carry out the proposed use. Mr. Bork.
Yes, the applicant has provided a copy of the quitclaim deed.
Great. Ms. Stevenson.
Agreed.
Snow.
Agreed.
Mr. Fralinger.
And I appreciate Mr. Gaudreau's background in development of these sorts of properties. Agreed.
Mr. Karen.
Agreed.
Excellent. I have nothing further to add. They've included a copy of the deed inside the application, which is official and verified from the Registry of Deeds. All those in favor of letter H being met, Mr. Bork.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Ms. Snow.
Aye.
Mr. Fralinger.
Aye.
Mr. Karen.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Letter H. The applicant has the technical and financial ability to meet the standards of this section and to comply with any conditions imposed by the Board of Appeals pursuant to subsection 5 of this section. Mr. Bork.
First of all, the applicant has provided a letter from Katahdin Trust Company saying that they are qualified, and they're also working with various firms such as Teradyne and CWS, as well as Orrin Haskell. So very professional firms to assist them on this project. And the applicant has a lot of experience developing these kinds of properties. Specifically, this kind of facility for people the aged or disabled, people who need special attention. So I think that's all very much shows that the applicant can do this well.
All right, thank you. Ms. Stevenson?
Yeah, I agree. He has done multiple similar projects like this before. They did say that it wasn't totally secure for funding, but did not have concerns about securing it completely.
Right, this, for a lot of projects like these, they need to go through this process to make sure that it can be brought forward through the town before a lot of final contracts are signed and so on, with a lot of developments. Ms. Snow?
They have demonstrated ability.
Mr. Freilinger?
No, agreed. And Mr. Chairman, appreciate that. The often the financing is contingent on approvals from boards such as ourselves. So, and given their experience, once they receive our approval and the planning board approval, I have no doubts that they'll be able to have the resources to make this follow through. So, no questions.
Great, very good. Mr. Karen?
Nothing further to add.
Great. I also have nothing further to add that hasn't been covered. They've hired everyone to that's indicated on the application, and thank you, Mr. Gaudreau, for speaking earlier on your behalf. All those in favor of letter H being met, Mr. Bork?
Yes.
Yeah, letter H. Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Ms. Snow?
Aye.
Mr. Freilinger?
Aye.
Mr. Karen?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Letter I, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to the generation of noise and hours of operation. Mr. Bork?
Well, I think the fact that it's nowhere near a residential neighborhood is important. This is basically an office building, medical facility, surrounded, completely by those kinds, or that buffer area with the Nonsuch River utility right away. There's in the highway and Route 1. I mean, there's really no residential area anywhere near that, which would create a problem with noise of any kind.
Very good. Ms. Stevenson?
I agree. It seems like it's compatible with the neighborhood and in respect to generating extra noise.
Great. Ms. Snow?
I agree, low impact on the existing abutters.
Excellent. Mr. Freilinger?
Agreed. Nothing further to add.
Mr. Karen?
Agreed. There was the opportunity for nearby a better comment, and there was none provided, so no concern.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, with respect, I mean, if you're talking about compatible use, again, we've pointed out that there are several facilities within just a 2-mile radius surrounding this along Route 1 that sort of match the means of description of this facility. All those of letter I being met. Mr. Borg?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Ms. Snow?
Aye.
Mr. Freilinger?
Aye.
And Mr. Karen?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to approve appeal number 2718 as presented, with the recommendation that planning board reviews and confirms the shoreline zone calculations during their review. Mr. Bork?
Yes, I make a motion to approve appeal number 2718, a special exception appeal by Teradyne Construction LLC on behalf of Contour Properties LLC, located at 8 Science Park Road, unit number 3, with a contingency that it be approved by the planning board.
Great. Mr. Karen?
I second.
Discussion? And we made sure that we included in there that the planning board is to review the shoreline calculations as well, Brian. Great, thank you. All right, all those in favor, Mr. Bork?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Ms. Snow?
Aye.
Mr. Freilinger?
Aye.
Mr. Karen?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion passes and the application is approved. Congratulations, Michael and Mr. Gaudreau. Thank you guys for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you all very much. Have a great
You're
night.
welcome. Thanks. Yes, Bob? Mr. Goudreau, you want to speak? Maybe he's trying to hit the exit button.
Bob, you have to unmute yourself.
Try space bar or the mute button in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, possibly.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
sir.
Yes,
Thank you very much. I'm glad that good professionals make good projects. So I'm happy to have the people around me to make projects successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to go to zoning board comments. One comment that was brought up tonight, Mr. Longstaff, would you mind noting that in the future, when we have our next meeting with Attorney Saucier with us, let's have him talk about the shoreland zone ordinance and some examples or some case study or something that would pertain kind of closely to what we're doing here.
Sure. Happy to do that.
Awesome, thank you. There was one other one I wanted to mention. Oh, that was that. But also tomorrow, I'll get to you guys. Tomorrow is also the planning codes and appeals through the MMA workshop, local planning boards and boards of appeals Zoom webinar on February 10th. That starts tomorrow. It's available. It starts, I believe, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. People want to check that out. It's the Maine Municipal Association website. And if anybody wants to sign up, just coordinate that through Durham. Might be a little bit late at this point, but there's always more of them that happen throughout the year. So I'll go to, I guess, one more quick thing I'll say, and then I'll go to you, David and Peter. One thing I'll do, and because you guys have noticed the pattern of how I'm kind of doing these meeting to meeting. One thing I'll do that will help us at the end when I say that I'll entertain a motion to approve appeal number XYZ. Technically in Robert's rules, when I say I'm going to entertain a motion, I'm making the motion. I'm just not moving on it. I'm entertaining it. So when I present that motion that way, Brian can copy down what I say that way, and it'll save you from having to say it again, David. Say if I were to go straight to you. So if I say, I'll entertain a motion to approve appeal number 2718 with the note to the planning board that they have to review, et cetera, et cetera. David, all you would have to say is so moved, and then there would be a second, and then we continue on from there. Does that make sense?
yes.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Cool. It'll just I really do appreciate your due diligence of reading a lot of that stuff there, but I can take care of that just that way we don't have to regurgitate or reiterate anything. So just trying to streamline a little bit as we're doing the Zoom thing. Other comments? Sorry, first David and then Peter.
Yeah, I just regarding the shoreline zoning, I'm not sure to what extent that's covered in the Maine Municipal Association meeting tomorrow night. I suspect not in depth to the extent of our unique situation here in Scarborough. So
yeah,
I think that's very important that we do have something that's tailored to what our situation is. From what I can recall of prior association presentations, workshops, I don't really think they get into that too much.
Not too much. It's really because there are other boards that they go over as well. Zoning is just a small part of the overall agenda. So we'll have our next session with the town attorney. That happens usually once or twice a year, a couple times a year. We'll have that as a meeting topic because he'll come prepared with a lot of this and can give us a little formal education on it. Mr. Fralinger?
Yeah, so to get back to the BOR district, it struck me that this probably wasn't a variance that had the BOR zoning kind of thought comprehensively about what medical facilities were. This probably wouldn't need to go through a variance process. And the first thing in the BOR request, I've got my list up right here. Permitted uses are medical and diagnostic facilities, number one on the BOR district. So I might recommend whether we take this to the council or to the long range planning committee or to some other group that looks at zoning zoning code updates. This probably is something that we could probably they could probably deal with an update to the BOR code rather than us having to take this through and create an additional step for an applicant.
Yeah, would that be town council or ordinance or charter committee? Oh, sorry. I'm looking at Mr. Longstaff on this one.
Okay, yeah.
You don't have the answer, Peter? Come on.
Yeah, I guess with that, if I might, so these long-term residential care facilities were not a permitted use in the BOR as it was imagined and created at whatever time the BOR zone was created. And if you look at the other special exceptions, you've got group daycare facilities, daycare centers, nursery schools, those types of things. I would just offer that in order to get this use even considered in the zone, because it wasn't imagined as a permitted use, it's not that they didn't think about it, it's that they thought about it and decided it was not appropriate originally. And so then they went back at the request of Mr. Goodrow with this project in mind and decided that, well, perhaps it could be appropriate if it meets the special exception criteria. So I would offer, despite everyone's comments, and I will certainly pass them along, but I would offer that this has already been discussed and been decided, and it was felt that the special exception was the appropriate place to put this use because it gave this board, for example, a chance to review the appropriateness with regard to all of these types of criteria. And again, remember the special exception, even though our definition is worded poorly, and believe me, we're talking about changing that. A special exception use really is a use that should be okay if it meets these types of criteria. It may not be okay in every instance. And so it's appropriate in my mind for this board to have a crack at discussing that and seeing if it is in fact appropriate in the proposed location. So it's contextual, okay? And it's not necessarily, hey, there's 100 other long-term residential care facilities, so it should be just permitted use, because it's a very specific kind of use. You don't have a lot of these. You might have a lot of medical office buildings because you might have a lot of medical providers, medical doctors, medical diagnosticians, and all of that good stuff. This is a very unique use, and I think, Peter, you mentioned it's a very specific and complex type of project that requires particular expertise, and it may not be appropriate for every particular site that somebody might want to propose it in. So I'm happy to pass that along. I would not, if I were you, the board members, feel insulted if they said, thank you very much for the comments. We think we've discussed it and this is where it goes, but I will pass that along.
Brian, I appreciate that. And maybe that is a broader comment on the BOR classification. And as a member of the Long Range Planning Commission, or Long Range Planning Committee, which has some role in defining future zoning enhancements or zoning code changes, I'll take that up as well. So maybe if you can bring it up through staff, and I'll bring it up through my side as well. But it does seem like there's something, again, if you locate enough medical facilities, the idea of not locating care facilities co-equal to those becomes a little strange. Let's put the continuing care facilities 3 miles away, but have the medical facilities that will deal with many of their issues in its own little bubble. It starts to seem odd. So, but that's a longer kind of conversation. I totally agree with where you're coming from on that. But I'll raise my hand and take the baton on that from a long range planning committee perspective as well.
Yeah, sure. And as I said, I will definitely, as the board's request, I will definitely bring that up to my supervisor, the planning director, and he can shepherd it through that process. And as you know, he's heading up staff support for your long range planning committee too. So
Exactly.
he'll get
Yeah,
it from both sides.
Jay does a good job. Yeah, exactly. We'll,
I think-
we'll tag team. No problem.
And I think, I mean, at the very least, it's worthy of a conversation to have it noted that, yeah, this is something that we're thinking of, and let people take another stab at it. If it's the determination that they don't want to act on it, then we at least raised the question and brought up the discussion on that. I feel as though, the way things are sort of transitioning as we move forward, we may be seeing more of these, modifications to the ordinance just to allow facilities like this to go in here. I think it made it very easy to really go with that thought tonight, only because, I mean, I'll say the location of this facility with this particular application was a pretty slam dunk of where it was going to go. As far as it's pretty clear cut. There's nothing not nefarious, but there's nothing weird going on here like
Yeah.
we normally see with a lot of our other applications. So it's easy to say that, well, this should just always be a consideration. But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes there could have been, a residential neighborhood right behind there. And there are a lot of, I know from a lighting standpoint, there are a lot of certain lighting, cutoffs for light pollution and but there has to be a lot of security lighting around these facilities to make sure people, don't wander or things like that. So you may not want to have all these bright lights right next to your house in this neighborhood. So location matters. But all great points.
You could also look at it the other way. What if they propose to site it right next to an industrial facility where there was, jackhammers and machinery operating all day long? And this is supposed to be a residential care facility. That's not appropriate maybe either. So it can go both ways.
Yep, it could be out in Blue Rock in Westbrook. Oh wait, that's Rock Road now with the music. Oh wait, that's something else now. Anyways, are there any other board comments this evening? Great conversations and points tonight, everyone. That was great.
No, and the last thing I say, and this is kind of the pitch for the MMA thing. Part of what this kind of came out of for me is the MMA does remind you that zoning variances or zoning zoning variances to zoning should be exceptional, and to the extent that they're not, or you can perceive them as not being exceptional in the future, really should drive a change in the zoning ordinance rather than a continued variance process. So that's kind of what I was thinking about tonight as well in bringing this up. So yeah, like I said, James, to your point, all the things about this particular site and everything else made this an easy, specific decision. I'm just trying to think what our remit is and what we're supposed to do as part of a community and part of an advisory group for the town.
Yep.
So,
and as we should. I appreciate the thought. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mr. Karen.
A second.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Great, that is unanimous. Thank you all so much. Great